Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome to Fear Street Explored, where your worst nightmares live. This week, I'm excited to visit Cheerleaders, the First Evil. I've been ready to get to the Cheerleader series for quite a while now, and I'm happy to report that it lives up to the hype. This book was a great time, with some of the most graphic Fear Street deaths so far, characters that are easy to root for, and a solid venture into the supernatural. It's definitely worth checking out if you haven't yet. This 1992 cover is iconic. I remember staring at it in the school library thinking it looked creepy as hell. The highlight is clearly the skull and the pom-poms. However, the possessed eyes of the center cheerleader are a nice touch too. But let's check out the blurb on the back. Newcomers Corky and Bobby Corcoran want more than anything to make the cheerleading squad at Shadyside High. But as soon as the Corcoran sisters are named to the team, terrible things happen to the cheerleaders. The horror starts with a mysterious accident near the Fear Street Cemetery. Soon after, piercing screams echo through the empty school halls. And then, ghastly murders begin. Can Corky and Bobby stop the killer before the entire cheerleading squad is destroyed? Okay, now let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Corky and Bobby, two sisters who are in the middle of tormenting their little brother Sean. Corky is currently placing a rubber rat outside of Sean's door in hopes of giving him an early morning scare. In classic Fear Street fashion, we learn that Corky and Bobby are new to Shadyside and have moved into an old haunted house on Fear Street. Lisa Bloom, notorious Fear Street gossip, gets name-dropped because she was the one to inform the sisters of the street's cursed history. At the breakfast table, Bobby casually shares that she thinks somebody was murdered in her room because she can hear voices whispering and crying at night, which her dad just dismisses as the wind. Also, Corky and Bobby look like twins, but Bobby is 1 year older. They all hear a terrified scream from upstairs and conclude that Sean must have found their rat to their parents' dismay. We then learn that Corky and Bobby were all state cheer champions at their last school, so they're hoping to convince the cheer team at Shadyside to let them perform in a special tryout, since the cheer team was already picked earlier in the year. The girls get ready for school, and Bobby pulls off a quick chapter cliffhanger scare, where she pretends to be dead by dangling lifelessly over the banister of the stairs, to Corky's horror. We then shift perspectives to cheer captain Jennifer Daly, who's described as looking like Julia Roberts, with large dark eyes and sensual full lips. Jennifer defies stereotypes and is popular without being stuck up. Jennifer is best friends with Kimmy Bass, who just so happens to be the assistant captain. The cheergirls are all gathering in the gym, and there's controversy in the air because not everybody thinks that Corky and Bobby should be allowed to try out this late in the year. We get a brief drive-by of some other cheerleaders that include best friends Heather and Megan, freshman Ronnie, and Kimmy's friend Deborah. Miss Green, their gruff cheer coach, tells the girls to hurry up and decide what they're going to do because they don't have all day to be standing around arguing. Jennifer ultimately decides that the girls should be allowed to try out because they made it to state last year and were even on ESPN, so they can make the team stronger. Corky and Bobby perform, complete with all sorts of cheerleader terminology, and at one point they're locked in a double cartwheel where they both have a hold of each other's ankles. Naturally, they killed it and receive a round of applause from most of the team, minus Kimmy and Deborah. Miss Green and Jennifer pull the girls into the office and let them know they're on the team. Jennifer is excited for them, but there is a moment of jealousy when Miss Green says that they have a lot to learn from them. The downside here is that somebody from the team is getting the boot because they can't afford to squeeze in 2 additional cheerleaders. So freshman Ronnie is now going to become an alternate for the team. Ronnie does not take this news well and bursts into tears, but Miss Green just flatly says that she'll get over it. Later, Kimmy, Deborah, and Ronnie meet in the locker room, and Ronnie is furious with Miss Green and Jennifer, but Kimmy and Deborah are still channeling their rage at the sisters. They're all still complaining as they step into the showers when Kimmy suddenly starts shrieking in pain. Someone has cranked the water up to scalding hot and she took it straight to the chest. Luckily, she gets out of the way before it can really burn her, but she's still pretty shaken up. We jump to 2 weeks later, and the cheerleaders are off to their first Friday night away game. They're being driven by janitor/bus driver Mr. Simmons, while Miss Green drives herself. This bus trip sounds like a nightmare, with the girls all chanting and hollering the entire time, but I suppose they're into that kind of thing. The other cheerleaders have warmed up to the sisters, aside from Kimmy and Deborah, but Bobby thinks they'll warm up too eventually. As they're heading to the game, Corky remembers that they left their fire batons at home and has the driver make a quick detour down Fear Street. It's storming intensely out, so Simmons opens the door to help defog the windshield. Jennifer's at the front of the bus, trying to give a motivational speech, when suddenly Simmons loses control of the bus, and Jennifer goes flying out the open bus door as it crashes. The girls are all thrown around the bus as it topples over and skids on its side. The tangle of girls eventually make their way to the emergency exit in the back, but it's jammed shut, so they all start crawling out of various windows. Once outside the bus, they can see through the headlights that they've landed in the Fear Street Cemetery. Simmons does a quick head count, and at first everybody thinks it's okay, until they remember Jennifer. They start to call for her, but Corky soon spots her. Jennifer is face down in the mud with her face smashed into Sarah Fear's gravestone, which reads 1875 to 1899. The girls all think there's hope for a brief moment, But when they roll her over, it becomes clear that Jennifer is dead. Well, maybe not. An ambulance arrives and the paramedics work around her in hushed voices for quite a few pages before declaring, yep, she's dead. Except, once again, not so fast. Bobby drops down to Jennifer's side, and her eyes suddenly spring open, so she's alive after all. Kimmy then turns the group's collective rage onto Bobby and says this is all her fault, that if she hadn't forgotten the fire batons, they never would have gone down Fear Street in the first place, and it looks like the other cheerleaders agree with her. We jump to 2 weeks later, and are in the middle of a pep assembly that's meant to celebrate the cheerleaders surviving their bus crash ordeal. They're looking fresh in their new maroon and white uniforms, because the old ones were destroyed in the crash. We focus on Kimmy, who is riding high because she's about to be named the new cheer captain, while Jennifer recovers. Right on cue, Jennifer wheels herself out into the gym to thunderous applause. Jennifer may not walk again and gives a short motivational speech to the school before Miss Green goes to announce the new cheer captain. This heads right where you think it will, with Kimmy not being named the cheer captain. Instead, Bobby is. Kimmy cannot hide her disgust, along with Ronnie and Deborah, but the crowd cheers too loudly for anybody else to notice their protests. Kimmy ends up storming out of the gym while she vows to get revenge on all of them. We catch back up with Bobby, who's enjoying her newfound status as head cheerleader, as various kids stop and congratulate her on her way home. One of these people is Chip Chastner, and he appears to be her potential love interest for the book, which is fitting considering he's the quarterback. Head cheerleader and quarterback, a classic pairing. They bond over having busy parents with high expectations, and eventually agree to get pizza after an upcoming game. The next night, Bobby meets up with Jennifer to study. Jennifer lives in the North Hills, which is the filthy rich side of Shadyside. Bobby and Jennifer have become close friends because Bobby was the only one who visited her daily in the hospital, so they've formed a nice friendship. Jennifer shares that she spoke with Kimmy and convinced her to rejoin the team. Bobby then tells Jennifer all about Chip, and this doesn't go great because Jennifer has a crush on him, and he's also Kimmy's ex, so that will stir up a whole bunch of drama. We then hop to cheer practice that isn't going great. Kimmy has successfully turned the girls against Bobby, so they're not very enthusiastic. They have a game later that night, so Bobby sends the girls home early to get a quick dinner. As Bobby's walking down the hallway to grab her stuff, she suddenly hears a high-pitched scream echo through the school, and all the lockers around her begin opening and slamming on their own as if invisible hands are throwing them around. This rightfully freaks her the fuck out and she takes off running to the source of the scream, but when she turns the corner, she finds nothing. She starts to wonder if she imagined the whole thing, and back at home, Corky just thinks she must be very tired. As the sisters are chatting, the closet door suddenly flings open, but this is just little brother Sean getting a revenge scare. We then arrive at the game later that night, and the girls are doing their best tiger cheers. I find it funny that they're the Shadyside Tigers. I figured it'd be something spookier, like owls. There's a lot of sports excitement going on, and the cheer team is doing great. Bobby is extra focused on Chip because she wants to make sure they have stuff to talk about after they meet up later. But Chip is really struggling. He keeps freezing in the middle of easy plays and getting himself tackled. He eventually gets tackled so hard that he has to be taken away in a stretcher. But the game goes on, and Bobby spends the rest of the game worrying about him. The Tigers lose the game, and Bobby finds Chip after the game still kind of in a daze. He doesn't know why he couldn't throw the ball or move when he wanted to, and Bobby offers to drive him home. This of course leads to a sudden makeout session in the car that kind of comes out of pity. They stop after a bit, and Chip asks her to drive him home because he's still not feeling well. The next Monday at practice, Kimmy comes in hot and starts accusing Bobby of stealing her man. Bobby fires back that she didn't do anything wrong because Chip asked her out, and this causes Kimmy to launch into a full-on girl fight. Kimmy grabs Bobby by the hair and starts yanking on her until Jennifer appears and gets them to separate. Miss Green forces the girls to apologize, even though Bobby didn't do anything wrong. They then all start practicing a new routine, which involves Kimmy standing on Corky's shoulders and diving up in the air and landing into Bobby's arms. This goes exactly where I was hoping it would, and as Kimmy prepares to leap from Corky's shoulders, Bobby finds herself paralyzed, kind of like Chip during the football game. She tries to warn Kimmy not to jump, but is frozen, so Kimmy crashes to the floor hard, smacking her elbows, knees, and forehead onto the gym floor, unconscious. Whoopsie. The other girls all start accusing Bobby of letting Kimmy crash on purpose, and Ronnie even goes as far as calling it attempted murder. Paramedics arrive on the scene, and it appears Kimmy's wrist is also broken, so Bobby ends up just running full speed home. On the way, she's suddenly startled from behind, and ends up being Chip. She tells him that she froze just like he did during the football game, and he suggests that she go to the doctor like he's having to. I think this is a good moment to throw out some predictions. I feel like we have some dark magic at work here, from possibly Jennifer, because Kimmy is too obvious of a villain. Jennifer may be jealous of Bobby, since she had a crush on Chip too, and she might be going after Chip out of bitterness. There is also that whole thing with Jennifer being dead briefly on Sarah Fear's grave, which is very specific, and couldn't have been included for no reason. Bobby meets up with Jennifer later that night, and tries her best to convince her that she truly was frozen in place and out of control of her body. Jennifer seems skeptical, but tells Bobby she believes her. As Bobby starts to walk home, She notices a shadow on Jennifer's window shade of somebody walking around the living room. Jennifer is home alone, so Bobby is perplexed. She creeps closer up to the living room window, and it becomes clear that Jennifer is out of her wheelchair and pacing around the living room. Bobby decides to ring the doorbell to confirm this, but when Jennifer answers the door back in her wheelchair, so she tells herself that she's just seeing things. I don't know why Bobby wouldn't just assume the girl just quickly hopped back in her chair. It's not like that's a hard thing to do. When Bobby gets home, she wakes Corky and tells her all about Jennifer walking. The two rehash the plot together, but Corky thinks Bobby is losing it and needs to go to the doctor. This enrages Bobby, and she calls Corky a traitor and storms out of the room. Corky is now mad at Bobby and thinks how she hates her right now, but Stine then ends the chapter with this ominous sentence. But Corky had no way of knowing that this was the last night she would ever spend with her sister. So, it looks like one of these sisters is about to get taken out. The next chapter then opens at cheer practice after school, with Bobby hollering out orders to her team, who spends a couple pages just straight up ignoring her. Kimmy has turned Heather, Megan, and Deborah fully against her, and Corky had to stay late to meet with her science teacher, so Bobby only has Jennifer on her side. Miss Green walks in and cancels practice, saying that she needs to speak with Bobby, and she knows immediately where this is headed. Miss Green asks her to step down from the team, because regardless if she dropped Kimmy on purpose, she's lost the trust of the team and they no longer want to work with her. Bobby starts to argue, but realizes it's pointless, and leaves Miss Green's office defeated. She heads into the locker room to shower up and head home. When she walks into the showers, she thinks she hears somebody and calls out, but no one answers. Bobby turns on a shower and takes a shot of scalding hot water to the chest like earlier. Then all the showers kick on by themselves and start filling the room with boiling hot water. The drain is suddenly clogged, so Bobby's feet are soon hopping around an inch deep of scalding hot water. She shrieks for help and tries to turn off the showers, but it's no use. They won't switch off or cool down. She tries the metal doors leading into the showers, but they've either been locked or barricaded shut, so she's sealed in. The steam is growing so thick she can hardly breathe as she attempts to jump around in this boiling hot water that's growing deeper by the second. Bobby ends the chapter screaming in pain, and we open the next chapter with the unsettling title of What Corky Found. We're now following Corky's point of view as she wanders into the gym wondering where everybody went since she was late for practice and missed the drama. She eventually makes her way to the locker room and notices it's steamier than usual and spots Bobby's clothes on the bench. She also finds Kimmy's silver megaphone pendant on the ground nearby. She decides to check on her sister in the showers. She finds the doors shut, which she thinks is odd, and when she yanks them open, a wave of boiling hot water rushes past her legs. The showers stop running, and then Corky spots Bobby. Through the gaps in the parting fog, her body slowly became visible. Her arms were crumpled beneath her legs were folded, her hair was soaked and matted over her head and onto the floor. Her back, her legs, her skin, her entire body was red as a lobster. Gripped with fear, Corky plunged into the room and dropped to her knees into the scalding water. With a loud gasp, she reached down and pulled her sister's head up by the hair. Bobby stared back at her with vacant, wide-eyed terror, her flesh swollen and red, her mouth locked open in a silent scream. Well, that was probably the most horrifying death we've had in Fear Street so far. Slowly getting boiled alive. Not to mention Stine getting psycho with this one and killing off the protagonist midway through the story. The next chapter opens with Corky walking through the Fear Street cemetery to visit Bobby's grave. She passes Sarah Fear's grave, and it occurs to her that's where Jennifer nearly died. She takes a closer look and notices 4 other tombstones that read 1899, the same year Sarah Fear died. She briefly wonders what happened and if Sarah Fear's entire family had died with her when she herself was only 24. This thought causes her to start sobbing, reflecting how Bobby was only 17. She thinks back on the funeral 2 weeks prior and how the cheer team had come to pay their respects, but Kimmy stood coldly off to the side and was more interested in staring at Chip, who also attended the funeral. Corky updates her sister that Kimmy is now head cheerleader and thinks she's hot shit. We also learn that the police think Bobby had a seizure in the shower and that's how she died. Corky reaches into her pocket to find a tissue and pulls out Kimmy's megaphone pendant. This causes her to realize that Kimmy must have been there when Bobby died, and that Kimmy had the most hatred for Bobby out of all the other girls. Corky wastes no time and drives over to Kimmy's house to confront her. She bursts into the front door and finds Kimmy with Deborah and Ronnie. She tosses the pendant at Kimmy and starts shouting how she has proof she was in the locker room when Bobby died. The girls are all very confused, and Kimmy drops the bombshell that she gave that pendant to Jennifer over a month ago. Corky screams how Kimmy was always jealous of Bobby, which Kimmy agrees with, but insists she would never hurt Bobby. Corky is stumped momentarily, because since the accident, Jennifer no longer changes in the locker room with everybody else, but decides that makes it even more suspicious that her pendant was found there with Bobby's clothes. Corky is on a roll, so she races out of Kimmy's house, as all the other girls try to stop her, because she's managed to freak them all out and they all think she's having a psychotic break or something. Corky speeds to Jennifer's house and catches her just in time. Jennifer pulls out of her driveway, and Corky follows close behind. She's confused because she doesn't get how Jennifer is driving if her legs supposedly don't work. Corky follows Jennifer to Fear Street Cemetery and watches Jennifer hop out of the car and walk on in. Corky follows close behind, ducking behind trees and tombstones, and finally comes across Jennifer in full cheerleader outfit, doing a strange silent dance around Seraphir's tombstone like she's worshiping the moon. Corky is a bit reckless at this point and comes out from hiding, demanding to know what Jennifer is doing. Corky is greeted with a husky voice that simply says, "I'm not Jennifer." Then a whirlwind of dirt rises from Seraphir's grave and surrounds the two girls. Corky can't see anything but Jennifer inside this whirlwind of dirt, whose eyes are now glowing green. Jennifer goes on to explain that Jennifer died weeks ago on top of Seraphir's grave, and that this spirit, or demon, was down there with Seraphir, waiting for a new body to possess. Corky tries to get away, but this demon is like, "No, now it's your turn to live in the grave." Evil Jennifer waves her hand, and the coffin in the bottom of the grave pops open, revealing a worm-infested body of Seraphir. Corky can hear the cries of Kimmy, Deborah, and Ronnie outside the whirlwind of dirt, but it's too late. Corky's then tossed into the coffin. Lucky for her, her cheerleading instincts kick in. She's able to land on her feet and then spring out of the grave as the dirt continues to rain down into the hole. Corky starts wrestling with Jennifer, trying to force her back down into the grave. Jennifer's pendant falls from Bobby's hands down into the grave, because I guess she's been clutching it this entire time. Corky gets Jennifer really close to the grave's edge when Jennifer starts doing some demonic shit and a foul-smelling gas rockets out of her mouth directly into Corky's face. She starts choking on the stench and feels herself growing weaker. She tries to give Jennifer one last toss into the grave, but it fails. Luckily, she catches her second wind by thinking of Bobby and leaps onto Jennifer's back, choking her from behind. The evil air that is rushing out of Jennifer gets channeled back towards the grave, and Corky can feel Jennifer growing weaker. The evil spirit pours into the open grave, and then the coffin slams shut, sealing it back as Jennifer falls face down in the mud. The dirt then refills the grave, and Corky's left sitting on her knees trying to process what just happened. The three other cheerleaders run over to Corky because they all just saw this whole thing. Kimmy rolls Jennifer's body over for a pretty gross scene. Ronnie gagged and held onto Deborah to keep from sinking to her knees. As the girls gaped in silent horror, Jennifer's skin dried and crumpled, flaking off in chunks. Her long hair fell off, strands blowing away in the breeze. Her eyes sank into her skull, then rotted into dark pits. Her cheerleader costume appeared to grow larger as the flesh decayed underneath it, and her bones appeared. Two Shadyside cops arrive on the scene, and are horrified to find these four girls huddled around a partially decayed cheerleader. Jennifer's parents are summoned to the police station, but no one can give them any solid answers on how their daughter was suddenly found dead, weeks into decomposition, when she was alive just a few hours ago. Once the cops are all done questioning them, Corky returns home and tells herself at least the evil spirit has been defeated and is sealed back in Seraphir's grave where it belongs. But in a final page twist, she pulls back the covers and finds Jennifer's maroon and white cheer pendant laying on her bed. And that's how this one ends, with Corky screaming in horror because it looks like there's more to explore with this evil spirit after all. Overall, I thought The First Evil was Stine's best Fear Street book so far. It really felt like he had a bigger vision in mind with this one, and I suspect we'll be learning more about Seraphir and some Shadyside history in the rest of these cheerleader books. I thought Bobby was a great protagonist, and was sad when she met such a violent end. It was fun having Stine pull the rug out from under us like that, and I hope he continues in that direction as the series progresses. I really don't have any complaints with this one. It was just an all-around good book with a full-on demonic climax. I'm going to give this one 5 out of 5 steaming hot showers. This book made me wish that the rest of Fear Street was this well written. Well, that's it for Cheerleaders, The First Evil. I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of this series, and next week we'll be doing just that with Cheerleaders, The Second Evil. I don't know why Netflix isn't adapting this into a series. It seems perfect for it. Let me know in the comments what you thought of The First Evil. Did you see the Seraphir twist coming? Will Kimmy redeem herself? Do you think Bobby had the worst Fear Street death so far? Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,